I would say it has a lot of characteristics of, like some people would say it's a cult, right? But I can't say because I'm not an expert on that. But I would say it has a lot of similarities because it's so hard to leave. Yeah, I would say so. He's definitely a false prophet, false teacher. Initially, he comes on the scene with the answers to life's biggest problems.
Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Monday, January 30th, 2023. I hope all of you guys had a great weekend, a great week. I hope you are ready for a busy week on this channel because Jinger Duggar's new book will be released tomorrow. And this morning she sat down in an interview which aired on Good Morning America, where she talked about her book and answered questions from NIghtline's Juju Chang about her upbringing, about her family, her distancing from her family, and how she untangled herself from the mess of her childhood and what she feels today. Now, Duggar fans or people that followed the family or those that are just watching for the train wreck that the Duggars have created over the years, the critics, this is a book that is going to probably disappoint both sides because it's not a tell-all. It is her theological memoir, which is written and ghost written by Corey Williams, who actually works at the Master's Seminary, the seminary that Jeremy attends, which is founded and chancellored by John MacArthur. Ginger's book is about her disentanglement from the world of the IBLP and speaking about what it was like to grow up under the rules of Bill Gothard. Now, it's not all about Gothard. It's not all about growing up under Gothard. There's some weaving in of her life and her family and being on TV, but it's not going to be this nasty tell-all that she goes after her parents if that's what you're expecting. So in her interviews, she's been pretty guarded and very, I would say, measured in what she says about her parents. And today's interview with ABC was interesting because this was a time that we see her break down that I don't think many of us have seen this rawness of her in the past. And her reaction was startling. So Jinger seemed to have a lot going for her when she was doing this interview, and she had all the right talking points, but it was a question about her brother that really shifted the dynamic and the trajectory of this interview. So we'll dive into her reaction to questions about her brother Josh. We're also going to talk about a separate interview that she did with Fox News, where she also talked a little bit more in depth about Bill Gothard. So this book will be published tomorrow, and I will have copies of it here. We'll discuss a lot of the details here on this channel, and I'll give you a full breakdown to decide whether or not you want to buy this book. Let's dive into today's topic. But before we do, please give this video a thumbs up if you like this kind of content. Make sure to subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button down there. If you want to receive notifications, make sure to click on the bell and then set the notifications to all. And if you have something to say, make sure to leave a comment. And as always, share this video with your friends. The Duggar family came to fame in the early 2000s with their first documentary called 14 Kids and Pregnant Again. As their fame increased, they ended up getting their own reality show, which was first called 17 Kids and Counting, then 18 Kids and Counting, then 19 Kids and Counting, which actually aired on TLC, which included the entire family until 2015, when allegations against Josh Duggar were made public by a report made by In Touch related to a police report against Josh Duggar. Josh Duggar also was in the news months later after that because his name was found in a hack related to Ashley Madison, where it was revealed that he had paid over $1,000 a month for 2 separate accounts for guaranteed affairs with other women. Josh admitted to his infidelity at that time, and he resigned from his position at a well-known lobbying company that Josh was working for FRCA, which is a ultra-conservative lobbying group that has all about traditional Christian values, and he resigned after that. And the Duggar family had tried to pick up the pieces in a rebound of a show called Counting On, which was supposed to follow the older girls, and then that was canceled in 2021 once Josh Duggar was arrested. Since Josh's arrest and conviction and sentencing, there has been a lot of discussion about the IBLP, the harms of the IBLP, and what it's like to live under the IBLP. We've also seen a lot of cult-like behavior from the Duggar family, not willing to speak out against Josh. We've seen a lot of damage control between when something comes out from one of the siblings and then Jim Bob counters it with something else. Up until now, the only sibling that had been actively speaking out against her family was Jill and her husband Derek. And Jill and Derek, to this day, have not written a book or done anything to profit off the situation. She had a single interview with People magazine a couple years ago where she talked about breaking away from her family, and that's about all Jill's done at this point. Ginger, on the other hand, has written a book, and then she's written a children's book, and now this is a third book. So other books that she has written have had mixed reviews, and I'm sure this one will also have mixed reviews. Her interview with Good Morning America touched on the fact that she is of the belief that the rules of the IBLP led her to have very poor mental health and dealing with feelings of perfection.
We're the Duggars.
For the millions of fans of 19 Kids and Counting, Jinger Duggar's life seemed idyllic as the dutiful fourth daughter in a pious household. About her departure from the strict Christian teachings that she says caused her to suffer from perfectionism, eating disorders, and panic attacks.
So Jinger Duggar is of the belief that the IBLP and Bill Gothard's teachings made her feel like she had to be a perfectionist, that she had suffered from anxiety, panic attacks, and an eating disorder. Now, as far as I know, and from public statements that she has made, as well as for her previous book, The Hope We Hold, as well as depositions, Jinger was never formally diagnosed with any of these disorders. She hasn't seen a licensed therapist to diagnose her with any of these. For her eating disorder in her book, the previous book she wrote, her mom helped her. And everything else, I believe she's gone through biblical counseling, either through the IBLP or now through John MacArthur's church. She has, as far as I know from her own statements, not received professional help from a licensed therapist or a doctor to help her treat any of these ailments. So after that, they jump into this next portion where they kind of talk a little bit about the false teachings.
I would say it has a lot of characteristics of, like some people would say it's a cult, right? But I can't say because I'm not an expert on that. But I would say it has a lot of similarities because it's so hard to leave. I thought that his words were the words of God, and yeah, I would say so. He's definitely a false prophet, false teacher. Initially.
So Jinger further expanded about her relationship with God and sort of what it means in relation to Gothard in an interview with Fox News. And she explained this about Gothard. Sadly, Bill Gothard would take one verse of the Bible and make it say whatever he wanted it to say. And he would make up his own man-made rules and say, this is the Bible. And then he would have you vow to God to keep this principle, and it was very binding. He would say, never break your vow before God. It was fear-based. This actually reminds me of when Anna Duggar was speaking about to make a vow before God when she spoke about her relationship with Josh and why she couldn't get divorced. So Gothard making someone feel like they can't break their vow to God because they've made a vow to God through his teachings. So, I think it's interesting to hear her call it a cult and a cult-like, and she said that it's very hard for people to leave. I think it varies by family, and as far as how hard it is for someone to leave. I think the way that Jim Bob runs his family, it's very hard to leave. But she did say that it's because the communities are so tight-knit and so insular that leaving means you kind of have to leave everything. What happens after this point of the interview is actually the discussion regarding Bill Gothard and allegations against him by over 30 women of either SH or SA. And Gothard, who was actually never arrested or charged in any crimes, was removed from the IBLP in 2014. Gothard actually made a statement to ABC in regards to this, and basically denied that he ever harassed anyone. And then that led them on to a conversation about her brother Josh and the hypocrisy between Josh and his crimes and Gothard, and sort of the parallels between the two. And it's this that really startles Jinger and makes her take a step back.
You also point out that this hypocrisy mirrors the hypocrisy of your own brother, who committed his own set of unspeakable sins and crimes.
Sorry, it's hard to talk about. I know that that's a whole nother thing. It is difficult to talk about. But I talk a little bit about that in the book.
Ginger's reaction to the mere mention of Josh's name is really what startled me. I wasn't expecting her to, in an interview, break her face, because honestly, she has been taught her whole life to keep a confident and a happy countenance, and to always be pleasant, and to not let things get to her and not show emotion. And the fact that she brings up something that Jinger wrote in her own book, it's in her book, and that's why the topic is addressed. It's not to just throw out Josh because they want to ask a question about Josh. It was something Jinger herself wrote in the book. And it was almost like she didn't seem prepared. And that reaction is her crying. And I don't know that we've ever seen her cry. And the fact that she is crying there, I feel like there's probably some serious trauma still from this whole situation. And it deeply saddens me that to this day at 29 years old, you're thinking about your brother and the horrible things that he's done, and it makes you immediately cry. And it's easy for us to all point our fingers at Gothard and say Gothard is the reason for all of the trauma that she has and all of the fear and all of the sadness. But there's also someone else in her life, a couple people, her parents, and namely her brother, that have hurt her so much and have never actually gotten her help to deal with that pain. So Ginger's reaction, I think, is very honest, and it also is heartbreaking if you know her story. So she then describes really what she felt about the situation and where things stand with her and Josh today, which is that there is no relationship.
And how my heart just breaks for the victims and their families. And also just for all the trail of pain that's been left behind.
And condemned your brother's behavior by calling it a horrific evil. Have you talked to him since he was incarcerated?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't spoken to him. I think the best thing I can do is just pray for him.
Tears. Okay, so Jinger Duggar's reaction is tears, and she's very shaken, and you can tell that she says the trail of pain that's left behind. And Ginger's part of that story. She's part of that pain that Josh left behind. His kids are, his wife is, the 4 sisters. There is a lot of pain and trauma and fear that she probably carries with her to this day because of what Josh did to her. It's very easy for us to say, yes, Bill Gothard was probably a part of all of this because of the rules that were implemented in her house. But I do think that if we were going to be honest, there's probably a lot of trauma because of what Josh has done to her and the way that it was handled in her house. The fact that she was never allowed to properly seek any sort of therapy for it. The fact that she never saw a licensed therapist. The fact that she's never seen a doctor for it. The fact that her parents protected him, even to this day are protecting him. The fact that as a woman in that family, she didn't have a voice and her choices did not matter, and her victimhood wasn't allowed because she wasn't allowed to be a victim, because in that culture, it's never the perpetrator's fault. That's a man, because it's always something that the victim has done. So I do think that, yes, the rules contributed to what happened and how it was covered up by the Duggars. But I also think that there's some onus here for the pain that she has that isn't just Gothard. I think it's a mixture. I think there's a very oppressive environment. I think there was a narcissistic father that wanted to be famous and threw his daughters into the fame world, knowing this was in their background, in the middle of an investigation. They're filming with TLC, mind you, and giving them no time to properly get help, to grieve, to deal with their trauma. Never a time to breathe, to think, or to feel. And here we are, and I'm sure their lives have gone through like a whirlwind. Like, I'm sure it went so fast that finally today at 29, maybe now she can sit down and be like, what happened in my life? Now, this book, which will be coming out tomorrow, is again her theological memoir. And in an interview with Fox News, she said, interestingly, that she believes the most damaging, lasting effect of the IBLP on people isn't the abuse, isn't the guilt or the shame, but it's the fact that Gothard himself ruined Christianity for people, causing them to walk away. Gothard had this warped view of the Bible. I'd say the most damaging thing I can think of is the way that people viewed him. They left Christianity altogether because of these teachings. That's the most damaging, lasting effect. These teachings give people these burdens. He told a story of a pastor who had visited a woman who had just lost 2 of her sons and her husband at sea. She's like, why did they die? Why did they die at sea? And he looks up to the wall and sees a painting of a ship and says, it's because you have this painting hanging at your house. It's your fault. That type of teaching will send you into spirals of terrible, terrible things. And then she continued by saying, how could a picture of a ship bring you harm? How could this painting she owned send her husband and children to death? That's the guilt placed upon you. God says nothing of that in his word. I can see how sadly this type of teaching would tear someone's faith down. That trail of pain, hurt, and confusion is something that should never be the case. Teachings like this lead people to very dangerous, awful places in their lives. You know, she used trail of pain here when she talked about Gothard, but it's the same thing she said about her brother, trail of pain and hurt. And then she says it can lead people to very dangerous, awful places. So these teachings can lead people to depraved behaviors, the protection of men, the psychological abuse, the patriarchy that insulates men from any accountability, the complete suppression of human sexuality and not allowing any level of impure thoughts into someone's brain. It was like Bill Gothard took a bunch of kids and he said, I'm going to make you my guinea pigs. I'm going to decide if I can make the perfect child. And he wasn't experienced. He didn't have the licensing to do it. He didn't have the experience, the knowledge, the expertise. And all he did was thought he had the answers about life. And he ruined children by giving them these teachings. He radicalized parents to believing that this is what they had to do. And some parents took things to such extreme levels that they became as devout and dedicated as the Duggars. Not every single family in the IBLP is as dedicated and devoted as the Duggars were. So not everyone's story will be the same. But stories like Ginger's are very common in this group. And the fact that, you know, the lasting impact to her is that people walk away from Christianity is the worst thing that could happen, shows me that there's still she has healing to do. And I do think that maybe in 10 years, another book will come with maybe a different understanding of what everything that happened. But we will dive into more details when the book comes out tomorrow. You can, if you want, order your advanced copy, but it's available tomorrow on the bookshelves at Becoming Free Indeed. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.